Hey, Bomb Squad, if you're a comedian or a podcaster looking for an affordable website solution with a modern look, then we recommend Puck's Hub. With a Puck's Hub website, you can set up your new website in minutes with easy-to-use pre-built templates. Puck's Hub websites are customizable and can easily be integrated with other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The best part? Puck's Hub plans are only $5 per month. We use Puck's Hub for our website at the Art of Bombing podcast, and we think you should too. That's why we've partnered with Puck's Hub to offer listeners a free 60-day trial. Head over to puckshub.com to subscribe and use promo code AOBPOD at checkout for your 60-day free trial, and then pay only $5 per month after that. Take your career to the next level with your own Puck's Hub website today.
Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to the Art of Bombing presents Between Bombs Callbacks, where we call back the previous episode. This week we are calling back episode 269 that featured Christine Tomlinson. And with me as always is my co-host, co-producer, and cohort, Josh Shirley. How are you doing, Josh?
Great. I thought this was another fun episode. You and Christine got into a few topics. And
yeah, it was a great episode. You know what I just did? I introduced you, but didn't introduce myself. Well,
all right.
I just want to mention real quick though, before we get too deep into this episode, I'm trying to get better about this. If you haven't listened to episode 269, we highly encourage that you go back, listen to episode 269, because the information that we're about to talk about will make more sense. I mean, you could probably still pick some stuff up from it, but it's going to make a lot more sense if you already listened to episode 269. So go do that, then come back. We'll wait. We'll be here.
We'll be right here. We'll wait. Just hit pause, hit the last episode 269, and then we'll pick up. All right, we're going to stop and let you do that.
Okay.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. Wow, that timing was great.
Yes.
I don't think you and I have ever been that great on our timing for like being on cue on something.
Welcome back.
And we didn't even try that. That was not planned at all.
Yeah, we are winging it, guys. What we're not winging it about are these topics. Let's get serious. Let's talk about these topics.
Yeah, so, we got good stuff this week, guys. Get ready to strap in. You're going to get your notepads out. Get your notepads out and get ready to learn something. Notepads.
That's right. Take some notes in a pad. And first thing you ought to write down is that, there's when you perform, when you produce, you are asking a lot of yourself. Wouldn't you say, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know about you, because I know you produce as well. I find it more stressful to perform, and I don't always feel like my performances are as strong as they could be, because I don't spend enough time focusing on my performance and the jokes that I want to do that night. Like, I don't spend as much time working on a set list because I'm running around in producer mode. I'm more worried about, is all the equipment set up? Are people, do I have people covering the tickets, people getting checked in and seated? Is that going well? Are my comics on time? Am I missing anybody? Are my comics, once they're there, are they comfortable? Are they getting the service that, I promised them, whether it's a few drinks, things like that, whatever it is. And so I'm just running around in a fury, worrying about all that stuff. And I don't think about my performance until, it's time to start the show. I should probably kind of get an idea of what I'm going to do. Fortunately for me, most of my material, I'm pretty well I've got a pretty good memory, and it's pretty well, infused in my brain, and I don't necessarily need to look at a set list to go up and do some comedy. But I find that when I write out a set list and just, kind of review it before I perform, I have a tendency to give a better performance than if I just go up there without, just kind of willy-nilly.
You get yourself into the headspace. You have to have some kind of pre-show ritual, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, and now
you have to go through that, and it's harder to get into that place when you're in a different role.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, that is my pre-show routine. Usually is writing out a set list, and so I keep. A lot of people have joke books. I do have a joke book, but I also have a set list book that I bring with me to all my shows, and I try to write out my set list for that show, in the order that I'm going to do the jokes, and and then I just kind of, before I go up, I try to, read through my set list and my notes and kind of get how, think about things and how I want to say them, and try to pay attention to what's going on in the room as well. So if I want to incorporate something, usually it's, try to incorporate something that happened at the very beginning. Usually goes terrible for me, I will admit. Not good at it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I do. And again, when you're producing, you don't have that much time to really do that.
Yeah.
Get in that headspace.
You mentioned something that stresses me out the most. I mean, like, not to mention the promotion and all the things there. Like, before you get there and before people start showing up, your biggest fear is anybody going to show up? So you have that stress that your body has just kicked off its, chemical responses to, and then you start to come down from that as you're, then you kind of have that, you're moving in the opposite direction now. And then a new fear hits you, which is, okay, are my comics going to show up? And one of them shows up, but the other two haven't. And you're like, okay, you're late, and you're trying, I went to the wrong location. There's two of these. A bunch of those things happen. And it's always a run up until we got too many people. There aren't enough chairs. And like, every problem is kind of yours to solve.
Yep.
Until the first thing happens. And for me, when I produce shows, I like to pay my comics well. I like to fill the room up. I like to do everything right in favor of the audience. First, comics second, me third. But I also, and one of the things that I do for my MCs is I say, look, I'm going to go out and jump on the grenade first. I'm going to go make the announcements and do the things that you like least about MCing, so that you can do more of a set. You can do crowd work. You can do whatever you need to do. But don't worry about the raffle or the giveaways or what time the kitchen closes or any of that stuff, because I got that. And I go up there and I do that. And, they're appreciative, and that's great. But I've established myself to the crowd as that guy. And I'm checking people in, and people are seeing me. And sometimes they see you in that role, so that when you do go up to tell jokes later on, they have a different perspective, or their expectation for you is different. And that's when they're a little confused as to what's going on, and it can impact their reaction to your set. So I think producing your own shows creates opportunity for you to perform, and as a comic you should do that. But there are things sometimes that make it difficult to do, and it's all those things.
Oh, absolutely. And that is one thing that's nice about just being the host. Like, if you go, for instance, if you get a weekend at a comedy club and you're the host, you're the MC, you're representing that the comedy club, in a lot of ways, and you got to, be conscious of that. But at the end of the day, you're not responsible for the show. The club manager and the staff are. So again, if it comes into like a seating, they cover the ticketing. If they need to add more chairs or whatever little things come up, that's not your headache.
Yep.
But when you're the producer working at an independent venue, that is your headache. You're basically filling all those roles. So
that's right.
Yeah, getting that opportunity to host and just concentrate on your set's a lot different than when you produce and host. Or even if you get somebody to host a show that you're producing and you're just doing a spot, same thing. You're still responsible for everything. So you really have to, figure out whatever works best for you so that you can try to perform the best that you can. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the episode. Christine's got lots of irons in the fire. She's got these comedy festivals that she's creating.
Yep.
She has shows she's doing, and imagine having to perform in the midst of doing multiple shows.
Well, absolutely.
Many things going on.
Yeah, and then, on top of that, she's added, essentially, she has her own comedy club. We talked a little bit about that in the episode. So she has a comedy club. She's getting ready there's a festival that she's working on right now that's coming out, and she has independent shows on top of that, and runs an open mic in addition to all this. So, that's a lot going on. And going back to what you said, that's a lot of things you have to worry about in all those scenarios. Makes it a little hard to focus on performing.
That's right. Yeah, you're just constantly, you have to perform from over your shoulder. It's not easy,
but
my
hat's off to people who can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially that many shows. I have a producing partner, and we've got quite a few shows, but even with that, it's like, having a partner helps so much and we don't always perform on all our shows, so we just get to be producer. We take turns hosting, or somebody else hosts or whatever. So there's not nearly as much pressure as being the only person. So
yeah, you're touching on something that came up in our production, like how to produce your own show series, Dan, and that's that there are some things you can do to take the edge off of the problems that we just went through. One of those being, having maybe your less experienced comic who you give a guest set to in exchange for delivering on some of these administrative tasks.
Yep.
So have some kind of upfront discussion with that person beforehand and set expectations. Look, Kenny, you're going to do 7. Great. You probably have 5. You're going to do 7. Wonderful. And Kenny's excited because he gets to perform in front of an actual crowd, not in an open mic.
Yep.
In exchange, early on, people are typically down to get stage time in exchange for doing these other things. So check people in at the door. I used to do shows where we ended up exchanging a lot of cash, and I needed to have change on hand and stuff. I don't really see that anymore, but
yeah,
when I was doing that, I needed a guy to manage all of that and keep track of the books and, bring me stuff. And it made it easier.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say, when it comes to, if you have to handle a lot of cash, it's best to, you definitely need somebody you can trust. You don't want to just put somebody out, and that's where, if you're depending on the venues you're working with, sometimes they'll help with that. That's one thing that's great with one of my venues when we do, we do ticket sales online, and usually we do pretty good with the ticket sales, but we leave a little wiggle room for if people are doing walk-ins and stuff, and that particular venue is great about they cover the cash, they cover the change, they do the door. Yeah. I usually help with door or have somebody come help manage the door because there's multiple doors, but they make sure one of the doors is covered, and I make sure the other door is covered. Well, together we make sure doors are covered, but they handle the cash as far as, they make sure we have change for both doors, and then at the end of the night, they just cash me out. And then whatever, so that's a great way to work with the venue as well. But that's not always the case. You can't always do that. So
no. And in cash, if you are in a situation where you're having to actually collect money on site, and the venue isn't doing all of that for you, a couple tips. Number one, have somebody you can trust run it. We just talked about that. But another thing you can do is sometimes people are going to walk in with a credit card or tell you, I don't have any cash. What do I do? A good solution to that I've found is before the house opens or before people start showing up, have a discussion with the venue and say, look, here's a situation we're definitely going to run into. What I have found to work in the past is that you can set up in your cash register a miscellaneous charge. and you can set the miscellaneous charge to whatever the ticket price is. And we talk to, if there's more than one cashier or more than one bartender who's working the cash register, have the discussion with everybody and say, here's the plan. When somebody comes in, I'm going to send people to you and they're going to say, I want to buy a ticket, and here's what you do. So that you have some recourse for when that happens. Yeah. So that's an unusual scenario, but that's how I've gotten out of it.
It is, but you can also, and I would also recommend, if anybody's seriously doing like serious producing where they have to handle all the ticket sales and things at the door, you should really look into getting a credit card reader. You can get readers through like PayPal, Square. They're very affordable. One thing that I do, I used to have a PayPal reader called from the PayPal here, and they discontinued it altogether. So now it's been discontinued. And instead of going and getting a new reader, one thing that I've done is I just take payments through Venmo. And you can print off your QR code and have it on a sign. So that's what I do. Like at my shows, it'll say cash or Venmo accepted, and then I have the QR code of the venue. Of the Venmo, so that helps if people don't have cash. They go, oh, well, I can Venmo, because most everybody has Venmo now. You still run into those, rare situations where they won't have cash or Venmo and have to use a credit card. And then, like Josh said, if you can work it out with the venue, perfect. But again, if you're real serious about this stuff, get your own equipment. Make sure you can handle that at the door, because you don't want to lose a sale.
Yeah. You don't want to turn anybody away.
No, the other solution is if the facility, and a lot of venues and a lot of facilities now have ATMs. The other option is, there's an ATM right here, but not every venue is going to have that. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. Something else that came up in the episode with Christine was about the secrets of doing crowd work, and it was very bluntly stated to her from someone else she was talking to, you just have to do it, reconcile yourself to that you're going to suck at it, but keep doing it, and then you won't. So for somebody who wants more than that, Dan, what would you
I don't have the secrets of crowd work. I don't know what they are. I'm terrible at it. And I think this is an interesting subject, because depending on the comics you talk to, some comics love doing crowd work, some comics don't. I don't think as a comedian you need to be able. I don't think you need to be able to do crowd work. You need to be able to respond, and be in the moment and be able to handle a heckler. But is that crowd work? Because to me, crowd work is comedians' jokes aren't necessarily working, or they're just trying to break the ice. And, that might not be the scenario. It might not be a scenario of their jokes not working. Some comics will open with crowd work just because it's a way to break the ice. But if the comedian is purposefully asking an audience member a question or pointing something out or trying to get them to respond to something, that to me is crowd work. And that's not the same as if somebody heckles you in the middle of the set and you respond to it. Yes, it is a form of crowd work, but really you're responding and being in the moment. You're not intentionally trying to do the crowd work. And so there's two big differences there. And for me personally, I'm not trying to be a crowd work comic. There are great crowd work comedians, but for every great crowd work comedian, there's 9 others that are terrible, and they make the show so uncomfortable. Especially when you're doing a showcase show and you have a comedian go up right away, try to do crowd work, and it doesn't work, and now there's just this awkward tension in the room that you hope can be broken at some point in the night. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that the crowd might not be into being crowd worked on, and that's one of the reasons it makes it, awkward. And then the next comedian leans into it and tries to do it more, and then it just progressively gets worse throughout the night. So that's just me personally. And again, I've seen some incredible comedians do crowd work, and to them, props, hats off to them. I'm not that person. I write material. I'm not trying to, I made a joke and it's actually going to it'll be on an upcoming episode. I just recorded an episode yesterday with a comedian out of Fort Collins, Thomas Nichols. And we were talking about this, crowd work and stuff. And I basically said, if you're a crowd work comedian, why don't you just admit you're an improv comedian? Because essentially that's what you're trying to do is improv. You're depending on the crowd for their help for you to kind of derive material from. And nothing against that. I think there's some great improv comics, like I said. So for me, I think, the secrets of crowd work it really is just, if you want to do crowd work, you just have to do it. And you have to know that a lot of what it's going to do, you're going to make people uncomfortable. You're going to have a lot of bad sets, and it's not going to be great because it is something you do have to practice. You don't just get great at crowd work. You have to really work that muscle. I think I agree. It's one of them things. If that's the route you want to go, you have to just do it. You just get out there, do it. It's going to go terrible, and then you fall off the horse, get back up, keep going.
Yeah, if we keep crowd work in the two buckets that you just created, right? So the first one being a response to something that just happened. If it's a person who's saying something disrupting, making a comment in the middle of it, one convention I'd offer up is, I've got kind of three levels that I think about. The first is just trying to work whatever they said into the bit, make it part of the bit so that you can keep going. And then, it doesn't disrupt anything. It shows that you're able to, you're in the room and you're there and you're not ignoring what happened. And then two, if, it keeps going, then you can stop and ask and say, look, okay, what you're doing is disrupting the show. It'd be great if you stopped because I can't think right now. It's messing me up. Be nice about it. Cheers them, whatever you want to do. And then if that still goes on, then attack, right? And that's where you can go back on them. And if you're good at that kind of thing, do it. If not, then, maybe escalate it to try to get somebody's help to get them to stop or to get them out of there.
One thing I would point out here, though, your tips that you're giving are for handling hecklers not doing crowd work.
I was just saying, if it's in the two buckets, that's gotcha. The first one. Yeah. So we're in the first one. So crowd work. I would offer up this convention for crowd work. Like I like to visualize myself and the crowd as 2 points on this kind of clock or this pendulum, right? So if you think about a pendulum on a grandfather clock that swings left and right, and you think of the right side as laughing, they're loving your show, and you think of the left side as they want you off the stage, they're booing and throwing things, right? And the worst thing you can have is a crowd that's in the middle and not moving. They're just not doing anything because there's no energy. And so you've got to find ways to keep those things going. And good crowd work gets that pendulum to swing. One rule I'd give anybody is never get between the audience and where you want them to go. So meaning if they are, and so Christine, and this is what made me think about it. In the episode with Christine, she tells some joke that they don't like, or she loses the crowd, and it's not going well. So she starts trying to pull them back towards where she wants them. She gives some examples on the episode. You'll have to listen to it to hear what they are. But
yeah, hopefully, if I know you have,
and you have, congrats, and you so. But if you see what I'm saying, like if you go towards where you want them to be and you start pulling them, hey, come on, guys, that was funny, right? Like they're going to push away from you because the human dynamic is to do the opposite of what you're being pushed to do. So I think if you go the other way and you ask the crowd, all right, well, sounds like we're kind of stuck here and it's a quiet room. Here we are. I'm with you now. I agree that it's a quiet room. Or sounds like what just happened or what I said pissed everybody off. Is that fair? Yeah. So here we are, right? Now we're over here with them on their side. Stay over there and let them swing back on the pendulum to where do you want them to go? Right? So, yeah, I pissed everybody off. Sounds like you don't like rape jokes. Well, that's not nearly as funny as these next few rape jokes or whatever the like.
Got to go with the harshest example.
Sure. Yeah, not a good. But that's something that would piss a crowd off, right?
You're right. It's a good example. It is a very good example of a way that you will lose a crowd. But,
yeah. And I think the example she gives is I won't repeat it, but it's like just really disgusting. And so I think if you can acknowledge, all right, we got really disgusting right there. If I cleaned it up, is that where we want to go? Is that where you guys want to be? So now I'm asking questions and I'm letting the crowd decide for me where they want to go, and they swing back the other way, and I'm not pulling them.
Mm-hmm.
If I get on the other side and I'm like, guys, no, come on, you got to like this disgusting joke. You're wrong because you're just being defensive, or you're being petty, or you're being prudish, and that's you. Screw you guys. Screw you, grandma. Right? That's getting on that other side and trying to pull them where you want them to go. Yeah. So that's one maybe visual that might help people that are in that situation.
And I would like to add on to that with, because you make a great point about, you want to pull them in the direction you want them to go. And you need to do it by getting on their side, not getting them on your side necessarily. But I would like to add with just crowd work in general. If you're going to do crowd work and you're going to reach out in the audience, like your example is a reaction to your material not doing well. You can see you're losing the audience. You can see they didn't like the joke. You're acknowledging it, and that's the crowd work you're trying to have this interaction with them and get them on your side. That's good crowd work. If you want to do good crowd work, stay away from asking the same questions you see every other comedian ask. There's the kind of the hacky, what do you do for a living? Where do you live? Are you married? Are you dating? These things like that. Sure, you can be able to do some crowd work out of that, but it's not going to be great crowd work. If you want to do good crowd work, you need to be more original. And even if you want to ask the audience questions about things, have more original questions. Think outside the box.
And I'd add, and I think you're absolutely right, Dan, like that when you think about the pendulum kind of being stuck in the bottom and nobody's moving, and you start asking questions to get it swinging, that you're exactly right. That's what you should do. And I'd say have original questions. I love that.
Think outside the box.
Think outside the box, be different. And I would also add, ask an open-ended question, meaning like if you want somebody to respond with something other than yes or no, ask a question that begins with how, who, where, what, right? A question that would get somebody to give you some information that you can then build on and use. If it's did you, are you, could you, would you, should you?
Yeah.
It's right. People are just going to stop, and you're going to be stuck in that place.
Yeah. And now you got me. Now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm like, oh man, I'm thinking of tips now. Another tip, just real quick, is if you're trying to do crowd work on somebody and they don't want to respond and you're making them uncomfortable, don't lean into it. It's not funny because now they're getting uncomfortable. They don't want to be part of the show. Move on to somebody else. Don't force them, because the more you force them, they're going to get, like I said, they'll get kind of upset there, and you're going to lose them for the rest of the show. And depending on how the interaction goes, the more you push it and the more they don't want to be part of it, and the more awkward it gets awkward for the whole crowd. And now you're losing your whole crowd because you wanted to lean in on this one person because of your, it boils down to ego. You're so, it's ego. My ego's getting hurt because they won't respond to me. Well, not everybody comes to a comedy show to be part of the comedy show. So you got to remember that. If they don't want to be part of it, don't make them be part of it. Move on to somebody else. Because I guarantee you, for the one person that doesn't want to be part of it, there's probably a few that do. So, and you're going to have way more fun and a better reaction out of that.
You're absolutely. I mean, that is gold. I love that example because I've seen it where comics don't follow that rule and they stay on somebody and it makes everybody.
It
get off
does.
her, man. She does not want to be part of this, and so people start to get defensive about other people.
Yeah,
and
I've seen it.
You don't want that.
And I wanted to be the person to just yell, move on, but as a comedian, you don't want to heckle other comedians.
Right,
so it's
right.
like,
Yeah,
I'm just in the back. I'm just like,
same team. You're on the losing team, and you got to realize
I'm just like biting my, gritting my teeth because I don't want to say it, but I really want to just yell, move the fuck on.
Exactly.
They don't want to be part of the show.
You got to let it. You got. Yeah, that's a great one to end on.
Yeah, and real quick before we get out of here, we have one other thing. We didn't talk a lot about it, but she mentioned having a vision board. And so I'm curious, Josh, do you have a vision board? Do you set goals? I
have a spreadsheet.
You have a spreadsheet
with some goals on it about what I want to accomplish. And I think the idea of visualizing it is important. If you don't write them down, they won't happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. You got to write down your goals. I don't have a vision board. I used to have a vision board. When I lived in Minnesota, I did have a vision board. It was, full disclosure, it was because of a class project from when I was going to school. It was something, I forget what class it was, but they made us, the assignment was to make a vision board. And I made a vision board to what I wanted it to be. It wasn't like I, just made something for whatever. I put real things on it, and then I kept it hanging up in my office. In the move, it got destroyed or lost or whatever because it was taped up and whatever. That being said, I don't have that now. I should get another vision board and put up there. But what I do have is I do have a whiteboard that says it has my 2003 goals. I have about six or seven goals on there because it's a small whiteboard with little check boxes on it. But I got my goals on it, and as I complete them, I can check them off the list. And yeah, right now, full disclosure, we're going into we're in April. We're in April now already, and that's 4 months into the year. I have not checked any goals off of it.
All right. Well, so there's still time.
The first quarter was a complete flop for Dan.
Yeah.
But it is there. I look at it every day. It's right in front of my workspace where I work at my computer, so I see him every day. So, but yeah, I would encourage everybody, whether it's goals or doing a vision board, do it. Put it out there. They say if you want something, you have to manifest it. A vision board's a good way to manifest it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Between Bombs Callbacks. Thank you all so much for listening. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on wherever you're listening to the podcast. Check out the YouTube. We're putting out more content on YouTube. If you feel so inclined, another way that you can support the show is you can support the show by firing Josh by going to buymeacoffee.com/AOBpod and giving him a... You leave a little tip in the coffee pot. You're buying us a coffee, but then you leave a message on how you want Josh to be fired. It's that easy. And then I'm going to read that message to Josh. He's going to be fired. He's going to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
then
you gotta. It's time for me to go, guys. You gotta let me go.
And then I'm going to immediately hire him back because he's useful. He's a useful.
Yeah, and then you get to fire me again.
Exactly.
How much fun is that?
You see how this
Unlimited
works?
satisfaction.
All right, this has been great. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.